And so let's talk about the data submission.
Yeah, so for fall one data submission, this basically comprises your fall one data, which involves the student profile for fall one. This is your SENR, SINF, SPRG, SELA, SPED, and SSRV. So, of course, as you all know, you have to submit your SENR to gain ownership of the student, be able to submit the different file types like SINF, SPRG, SELA. And then if you have students with disability, this would then allow your SPED coordinator to be able to send your SPED and SSRV files to CalPads. And on a bigger picture, the student profile is just, even though we're submitting the student profile in end of year one, and then of course we continuously update the student profile throughout the year. This is not just limited, the data is not just being collected for fall one, is being used all over, and it basically continues to build up throughout the year. So you have your fall one student profile, which is then used for fall two in conjunction with course enrollments, EL services, and the PSTS for those who completed. And then you have your end of year one for courses, end of year two for program participation, and then your incident data and attend absent summary and cumulative enrollment for end of year three, and then of course for end of year four, our student with disability collection. So if we just take, just look at a bigger perspective of the CalPads process, for those who are new, this is basically just a very simple way to illustrate how CalPads work. So you have your SIS where you normally load or update your student information, and then you then extract your SCNR, which includes the student's SSID, or if a student does not have a SSID, that is also included, and you submit it to CalPads. CalPads in turn determines if a student already has an SSID, it matches those students, and for those who require a SSID, it generates a SSID after you've posted those records. And then in turn, again, you extract the new SSIDs, put it back to your SIS, which in turn allows you to be able to extract the supporting documents like SINF, SPRG, SELA, those other files. Now, you then submit that to CalPads, which CalPads will store, of course, obviously, and then if there are any errors, it would validate those records. And once CalPads stores that, it then uses it for different matching. It sends it to the state database for direct certification, for foster matching. It also sends it to TOMS, especially this year. Starting this year, it sends the data to TOMS to include those students in the initial ELPAC testing roster for those students with TBD. And then it also allows your SEDs to be able to push your data to CalPads. And then if CalPads sees any errors, it then spews those error descriptions to your SEDS system. So, and then of course for TOMS, as I've mentioned, the data goes to TOMS once a student is tested and the results are generated. Any EL and IFEP starting this year will be generated by TOMS and pushed to CalPads. You don't have to submit a batch file that includes ELs and IFEPs because CalPads will prevent you from submitting those. All of those data will all come from TOMS, although you would be able to manually add EL and IFEPs to CalPads, but with corresponding correction codes. And so let's just go back and delve into the details of each file type. So for the SSID enrollment, again, as I mentioned, this allows you to obtain SSIDs. It establishes ownership of the student record for you to be able to submit other supporting records and for your SEDs to be able to submit those SPED records, and it also designates districts of residence, and it allows you to provide a transfer reason and also establish an enrollment status. So this is a big deal, especially for special education reporting, and it determines who is accountable to report a student's special education file. And then, of course, it also allows you to update any no-shows, any returning students, any transfers, any students who are matriculating, and allows you to be able to resolve anomalies. So by correcting the SENR record of the student, it allows you to clear any CCEs and ERDs. And for the next file is the student information file. The SINF includes information like race and ethnicity, gender change, and starting this year, you have preferred names on top of your student legal names. So you now have the ability to be able to report preferred names for your student. And then, of course, you have the ability to update address history, you'll be able to, and based on this, it will be used to be able to identify students for state matching, and then determine any Title III eligible immigrants, and and be able to determine students who are included in the socioeconomically disadvantaged subgroup. So basically, the parent ed education level will be used for inclusion on the socioeconomically disadvantaged subgroup. And then, of course, you have your SPRG, which allows you to report students who are eligible in any federal and state programs. It also allows you to report any English learners, the English learner instructional strategies through the LIP program. And then, of course, it enables you to include students in the economically disadvantaged subgroup, which is the LCFF subgroup, and also the socioeconomically disadvantaged subgroup, which is the federally collected subgroup. And then we have our SELA, which is a way to report a student's English language acquisition status. So starting in academic year 2020-2021, the initial ELPAC testing will be computer-based. And so this allows you to be able to identify students who are eligible for the initial ELPAC by sending the data to CalPAS, and then CalPAS sends it to TOMS, and then TOMS then puts the student in the roster for testing. It also includes students who are English learners in the economically disadvantaged subgroup for LCFF. And basically, due to the shift to initial ELPAC testing to computer-based testing, EL students with status dates on or before November 13th of this year will be included on the LCFF. So it's not just as of Census Day. Anyone who is actively enrolled on Census Day whose EL status date is up to November 13 will be included on the LCFF subgroup. And then, of course, your SELA will include your primary language at home, which is a trigger for if a student needs to be ELPAC tested or not. And then you have your ELA status and the ELA status date. And then we have our special education SPED and SSRV. So this helps you report students who are in an IEP, ISP, or IFSP plan. It also allows you to identify students who have been evaluated or that are pending evaluation, and describes the program setting of the students and also their disabilities. That's for the SPED. And then for the SSRV, it identifies any services prescribed in a student's IEP and any associated services for the initial or annual meetings. And it also provides service details. So for the SPED and SSRV, of course, this all comes from your special education system. and is pushed to CalPAD. So our point of emphasis with this is that you need, for LA coordinators, you need to coordinate with your SPED person to be able to correct any errors. Make sure that you have the SPED roles to be able to see the files that they are submitting, and assist them with any error correction if possible.
Hey, Kyron.
Yes.
You've been motoring along pretty good here. But there was a question that asked you to repeat the statement regarding the inclusion of students through November 13th. Was that
Yes.
ELs or RFEPs?
ELs, because there's the LCFF report 1.17 and 1.18 includes EL students. So because of this change due to the ELPAC testing and all, computer-based and all, they've extended the cutoff date for EL students to be included on the LCFF to November 13th.
Do we have a documentation that lists federal programs and lists state programs, and maybe the CalPAD's file and data mapping where it's collected from, or a table of federal programs and state programs? So I can answer some of this, but maybe you have a different purview. So the CalPAD's data guide is going to list all the programs. It doesn't specify whether or not they're federal or state, but it does list all the programs, the program codes, and the details. And then the data mapping will tell you the eligibility criteria and the program codes of what are featured and counted on the report.
Okay, let me just share with you the data guide. I believe the data guide has that, and it also classifies if it's federal. So you actually provided the correct answer on that, Nate. So if you go to the SPRG section of the data guide, it lays out all of this information. So it gives you all the rules, and it also provides you the subgroups that these programs are included in. Okay, so look at the data guide, and if you have additional questions, or if you're looking for like a one spreadsheet with all of that information, then we don't have that currently, but maybe we can try to do one.
Can you go back to
later
the
on.
data? Can you go back to the data guide, Kyron, just for a moment?
Okay. Okay, one page.
Okay,
So,
now we see one page, and it says Student Program Section 2.1.3. So, everybody, if you go to the data guide, which is on the System Documents page, if you hit Ctrl-F, you're going to have the navigation on the left that Kyron has. By default, we all use it because it's a quick search. Chapter 2 is the student data groups, and you can see that it says student enrollment, student information, then student program. So that's section 2.1.3. And if you scroll through that section, details about every program is listed. Kyron's trying to zoom it. It's kind of gray and fuzzy. I don't know how you all see it. Now it's clear. And so he has the program, and the details about the program are listed there. This is where I was saying, I don't know that if it says state or federal or not, but I know the program details are there. And you would have to reference the code set to find the program code, and then use the mapping guides from the user manual to find out inclusion. But certainly information about every program that Kyron's going to talk about today is featured in the data guide. Flash 189 speaks to RFEP, right? The changes in the collection for the RFEPs.
okay, so moving on, we have the FALL1 subgroup. So after you've submitted your files in CalPAS, especially your student programs, CalPAS then aggregates those data and determines who are included on the different FALL1 subgroups.